Welcome to Sickcast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Jasleen Kaur, and I'm a researcher here at Sikh. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Sidak Impact Pod series. I'm joined here today by Manmit Singh. Welcome, Manmit Singh. Please tell us a bit about yourself and why you decided to attend Sidak.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Manmeet. I also go by Sahiba. I use they, them pronouns. Thank you so much, Jasleen, for inviting me and for having me here today as well. Sorry, the question.
No, yeah. Tell
um,
us a bit about yourself. We can start with that.
yeah.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, handy, handy. So, I was born in Punjab and then I was raised in California, and now currently I am doing my PhD at UBC, in the Gender, Race, Sexuality, and Social Justice program. I am, yeah, beyond a PhD student, I sometimes do organizing work, within like queer trans spaces, anti-caste, spaces, uh, Sikh spaces, um, and kind of pan South Asian spaces. But and then I'll to the second question was, why did I go to Sidak? All right,
Yes.
so Andy, so with that, I guess like for me, I like as someone who is queer, someone who's trans, non-binary, like I have definitely kind of struggled with Sangat like for a long time, and have been pretty estranged from Sangat, and kind of at large like the Punjabi and the Sikh community for most of my life. And it's only been kind of in the past few years, since I've started kind of going into Sangat spaces, where previously like my relationship with Guru Sahib and Sikhi has been more kind of uh, uh, on my own terms, me kind of like looking things up and building that relationship on my own. Have like listening to Kirtan, for example, all the time, but not really necessarily like going to the Gurdwara or going into kind of Sangat spaces and kind of even feeling a sense of Sangat. So I kind of started that journey actually with in California with the Jakarta movement, and that was kind of one of the first times like I kind of felt as if like there was like a formal Sangat that was starting to build out, whether it was through kind of going to Jakarta spaces or whether it was through finding other queer and trans Sikhs, through social media. So and then Sidak was kind of then like that next like step as part of that journey of starting to find and build that Sangat, and then wanting to kind of continue to expand that. So a lot of folks like for example, like Jakarta, like had recommended Sidak, and even in kind of my own research as well, like while I was looking up spaces that I could go access, like Sidak was continuously coming up. So I was really excited to kind of go and like spend time cultivating that relationship with Guru Sahib and doing it in such a way that it was within a Sangat setting as opposed to kind of on my own. So that was what led me to Sidak.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful answer. Yeah, I guess I wanted to know then. I think this like sort of not story or like personal narrative of like not feeling like there were spaces for you, and then you start to kind of like come into different Sikh spaces, and then it's like that kind of feeds itself. So you start looking for more. I think that's so relatable, probably to so many of our past Siddhikars and probably to many of our future Siddhikars. I think another part of that story is like nervousness about being in those spaces.
Mhm.
Um, so I wanted to ask you, what were your kind of like first impressions? So like how did you feel when you arrived at Sidak? How did you feel maybe even in the like weeks leading up to coming to Sidak?
Mhm.
Was there nervousness? Was there like excitement? Was there uncertainty? Was there, yeah, any number of emotions? Like what was kind of going through your brain and heart?
Yeah, I no, thank you for that question. So yeah, I do have like a really bad memory. So I where I yeah, I always forget like what I've experienced and what I felt in the past. So I'm gonna try to recollect though. But I do remember that I was really nervous though. I was excited because I was kind of for the whole summer I was looking forward to like those 2 weeks, and it was my first time going to Sidak too, and I was like, oh my God, like how's it gonna be? Like who am I gonna meet there? And I did like know like I knew, for example, like Harleen was there. Like there were like a couple folks that like I knew that you were there. So like I knew like there were gonna be some folks that I was gonna know that in that like I kind of felt a little bit of um comfort and affirmation, and also like kind of having consume some of the content that like Sikri has put out, like I had a little bit of like trust as well. And different kind of folks who had also gone through Sidak had also kind of affirmed that like this is going to be like a space that like could that will be more aligned, much more kind of will be very aligned with like how I think about Sikhi. So I did have that kind of foundation going in, but it definitely still like felt really like those butterflies, those anxieties that I feel and usually do feel of going into any Sikh space. So I think it was just that experience is just kind of like a constant and has been. It's gone better now, but especially during that, because that was like 2 years ago. When I first came to Sidak. So 2 years ago definitely was like a lot more of just kind of that like, oh my god, like I'm going to be judged, but it's okay. We're gonna or having kind of those like walls up. Yeah. So I remember like I was at the airport and I was just yeah, like and then that's when like I started kind of meeting everybody, like all the folks who were going to Sidak, and yeah, I was really really nervous because I was like, I was wearing my like short shorts and had my nails done, and I was just like, anyways, it was just kind of the and then even like once I did get to Sidak, like I definitely yeah, it was like I was definitely really, really nervous, but I do remember also kind of the different efforts that folks made. Like I mean, of trying to make me feel comfortable. So, for example, I remember when we were going around like saying our names on the first day. I know that I was like the only one who was like who used they them pronouns, but then I did notice like once I got to Harinder was like I use he they pronouns. So it was just like it was just kind of I noticed these kind of small little like efforts from folks to try to like make me feel as if like I wasn't there alone and that like I that were there to like come hold me as well. So yeah, the nervousness, the fear made sense and like was and but also like I'm really thankful that like folks were there to like hold space for it and also were in recognition of that already, anticipated it already, and were trying their best to kind of then navigate and create as safe of a space as possible.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I remember that. Yeah. And it's something that I think we talk about as facilitators too, of like, no matter who's coming to Civic, it's our like responsibility to proactively try to cultivate that space instead of like waiting for something to happen to then respond to, or like
Yeah.
waiting for somebody to feel a little uncomfortable and then we address it, you know? And so
Yeah.
that's also been a really big thing for all of us as facilitators. And it's like a learning process for us too, because every year we get a different cohort, and
Yeah.
trying to be much more proactive and not like reactive has been, I think, something that we've all tried to be more conscious of. Um, I wanted to ask you a little bit about like, so you're a two-time Civic alum.
Mhm.
Um, woo. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask, what tracks did you choose the first time and the second time? And why? Like how did that track maybe in your understanding like align with what you were looking for that particular year? Um, how did you see it kind of like slotting into your Sikhi journey or propelling your Sikhi journey? So if you could take us through those two, yeah, decision-making processes, I guess that would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, totally. The first year I ever did it, I did Sikhi 101. And I know that in Sikhi 101, because I like kind of on the website, like it was talking about how Sikhi 101 goes over Asakivad, and that was um that is one of my favorite Barneys. And I know like, people have different ideas or like, oh my God, you can't have a favorite Barney. But I guess when I say favorite, it is a Barney that I have like a really close relationship with. And it's one that I've kind of continuously grappled with and kind of invested in um, sitting with a lot, especially when it kind of comes to my own experiences as like an organizer, as someone who's kind of also not just organizer, but also I think kind of experiencing, witnessing, participating in different sort of violences, right? Like in the world as well. And trying to kind of make sense of how do I go about navigating that and how navigating this world that is full of like so much violence in which I'm also a participant. So anyways, all that to say, I feel like Asakivad has been like a very generative like container source for me, like and and teaching me and guiding me through. And I think I was really excited to then kind of delve back more into and further develop that relationship with Asakivad. So the first year, I was really excited to go into Sikhi 101. I still remember to this day, and this is something I cite actually all around. So just lead here and there, you will actually come up wherever like you will come up where I'll be like, yeah, Jasleen once told me, and then I will cite something that you said in an interview like years ago actually, but it's something that I still hold on to, which is you had said, you know, yes, there's so much like violence, there's so many reasons to despair, but in the way that the Asakivad has all these critiques against so many different set of violences, and at the end of the day, Guru Sahib still calls it Asakivad, right? The song, the Ballad of Hope. Guru Sahib still insists on that hope, even in the face of despair, in the face of hopelessness. So in the same way, Guru Sahib still insists on hope. We have to as well. So anyways, that's something that I still hold on to, something I cite, and something that I like continues to guide me. So anyways, long story short, I think like the first year, I going into Sikhi 101 felt really kind of appropriate in what I was sitting with, kind of where I was at in my journey as well, with wanting to not only kind of build further with Asakivad, but also just overall kind of grappling with these ongoing kind of threads of hope and hopelessness that I think like also kind of showed up and how I was showing up as well. I think it was very clear that that was something that I was struggling with and still do kind of to this day, but I think it's a little bit less than kind of where in that moment I was. My struggle was very visible.
But that's okay.
But
yeah, that's all right.
yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think that it's definitely not a bad thing to wear your struggles on your sleeves like that. But kikaida. Yeah, and then the second year after having taken good Sikhi 101, then I I was trying to decide between Gurbani 101 and Sikhi 201. And I remember, and this is something credited to actually something I learned at Sidak as well, something that I really appreciated and still kind of continued to hold on to. And this idea of Gurmat, right, being it's not a matter of what do you think, what do I think, what does the Guru think? Let's turn to that. So I know that like Sikhi 201 was going to be really focused on kind of discussions on topics of sovereignty, like identities, like really kind of intense and really important, and also what now are considered controversial like topics in the month. And I wanted to kind of continue developing that Gurmat lens before going into that space so that I can kind of show up as much as possible, not from a place of what do I think, but from a place of what does the Guru think. So anyways, so then the second year, I decided to go into Gurbani 101 before I do Sikhi 201. And then this year I've applied for Sikhi 201. So I'm hoping to then kind of end the trilogy with Sikhi 201.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, I think that's all really helpful. And I think it's good because some of the people who are listening to this are people who've come maybe once before and are trying to figure out what that second track ought to be for them. I wanted to ask you've like mentioned it a little bit, but more about kind of the community and sort of culture that's fostered at Sidak. So how do you feel like the environment and the people that you met at Sidak contributed to your experience? Did you feel like you built connections like beyond Sidak where it's like you're still in touch with certain people? I know for me, it's like the first place that I encountered a Sangat that felt kind of utopian, if I can use that word. And so I like have held on to those relationships so much because it just felt like they were so important and added so much like beauty to my life. But I wanted to ask about that. Like, how did you feel like the people contributed to the culture at Sidak? And yeah, have you like kept in touch with people? And what does that look like in your like day to day?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think no, definitely. I think I also agree that like the I this is something that Kabir shared at another Sidaker, and something that we were talking about Pai Nandalal, and he had shared a Saki of Pai Nandalal of Pai Nandalal being sent away from to go build sangats kind of in far-flung places and having this longing for coming back to the Guru, coming back to the sangat. And anyways, I kind of definitely like I think about that longing that Pai Nandalal felt for like, I want to return back to my guru. I want to return back to my sangat. I know I'm given this task right now by the guru, this hukam to like build sangat in these spaces, but like I long for that sangat. And kind of, I long for that guru, right? And to go kind of sit with and to be in the presence of the guru. So, anyways, I kind of I feel that where like every year I'm not even exaggerating. I genuinely look forward to like through the whole year for those 2 weeks because
Yeah.
I have this jaw, right? This like jaw of like this anticipation, this excitement that I'm gonna go see my sangat again. And I felt that I know the first year was like I had that nervousness going in. So like in the first year it was like a bunch of other complicated feelings, but after like Sidak finished and which during the whole Sidak process I was just like crying every single day. And that was like I mean, I guess we could go into that like a bit later, but anyways, like it was so generative. It was so like I was getting kind of I was learning so much. Like folks were so oh my god, it was just such a beautiful experience, like full of just like the fullness of all of it. And by that, like I'm speaking to kind of the joy and like the way like the comfort like the but also like the pain as well, right, that comes, and the pain being triggered, but also like working through those triggers and learning from those. So I think it was like all of that like that contributed to and added to like the fullness of the experience, and the complexities of sangat that like I think um I feel like it was just I don't have like the right words for it, but it was just so beautiful, and I and because of it, I the whole year I just like anticipate and look forward to like and have that excitement of like, "Oh, I'm gonna go see my sangat." Like I'm just excited to like be reunited for 2 weeks with my sangat again. Um, like and I say that to my friends too, like in terms of like it'll be like I'm gonna go see my sangat or like in like 2 weeks or like 2 months now, like in a couple. So it's like that um that I think that the space was so generative, was so beautiful. The sangat that was fostered was just so special that like it kind of resonate. I have a slight little glimpse into like that longing that Bhai Nandalal may have felt like in wanting to return back to their sangat and wanting to return back to the guru in that way. Um, and yeah, there was just so many special experiences like that. I can just think of my first year. I remember like literally touching Guru side for the first time, and that like oh my god, I could start crying thinking about that too. But it was just like my first time like getting to experience uh like taking a hukam nama, and I just remember whoa okay sorry let me stay poised and
I
not
actually
start
have cried
break.
on every episode so far, so
Okay.
it's actually required.
Okay. Okay. I did not anticipate this, but I do remember just yeah, I remember taking the hokam nama, and that was just my first time I touched Guru side like that. And yeah, I just remember I was weeping the whole time. And it was also a hokam nama that was so personal because like, the Guru was listening as they always are. And oh my god, it was so
No, it's okay. I'm
embarrassing
literally
because
like,
no, it was so embarrassing because Santa was like facilitating it. And I just like literally the minute I touched Guru Sahib, like I just started like the tears slowly started flowing. And then when we actually went to the Hokam Nama, like when we like opened, like it was like it was Rag Biragadi. So it was like it was the whole rag was about longing and so it was just like so relevant. And then I just started weeping started weeping, and like it was such a surreal experience. But anyways, okay, long story short, sorry, it was just the whole experience is just that has like a very special place in my heart. And I think I make that very clear because everywhere I go I'm just always recruiting people and trying to get people to like go to Sidak because I really there's yes, I will stop talking now.
no, I think there's so many things that I'm thinking of from what you've just said. Like, I think um, it's very like that memory is so beautiful, and it's one that has been shared, I think, on like maybe a few of these episodes of like different Siddiqers saying like that is the first time that I like touched the Guru Granth Sahib. And like that's I think that is a thing that happens every year where it's like people who, because other people have told them that they're not allowed to be in that space or behind that balki or to be interacting with guru in that way, or because they have convinced themselves that that is true because they haven't seen people like them interacting with guru in that way. It like is an overwhelming experience to be like sitting behind the guru and touching the guru in that way, and to have like if it's just Preet Benji or Santpir or whoever saying like that's actually you are not only allowed to be doing that, but that's actually like your right because that's your guru. Like
Mhm.
that's such a
Mhm.
crazy thing to hear, even though it should
Yeah.
be. Um,
Yeah.
and it like, yeah, I think it makes me cry every time. So it doesn't, yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's normal that you cry.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's such an important thing. And it's one of the things that I notice about Sidak every year is that there's always at least like one or two Sidakers who have never had that experience before.
Yeah.
And it might feel to people who are used to it like it's not a big deal, but it
Yeah.
certainly is.
Yeah.
And to be in a space where you are encouraged to foster that kind of relationship um, by people of all like different sort of walks of life, of all different kind of like relationships with their Sikhi, some who like are like Sangat Singh who are like wearing full bana, some who
Mhm.
aren't, you
Mhm.
know, like I think that there is something like the Panth has always been so diverse. And I think
Yeah.
we live in a time where it's like easier for us to kind of like self segregate.
Yeah.
And some of it's because like out of wanting to protect ourselves. Um,
Mhm.
but I think it sort of tricks us into like forgetting that we've always been such a diverse community and that like one of the things that you talked about like the culture that comes about at Civic is like it's not like everybody in the room agrees with each other. Like
Yeah.
that's never happened. But the thing that is so beautiful that I like see
Mhm.
every year is the kind of like if I could think about it as like a visual, it like feels like this like community is like this amorphous like thing that's like kind of rippling and shape-shifting. And I
Yeah.
watch people over like that first week especially like kind of slot into each other and each other's dispositions, each other's like communication styles, and sort of make space for each other. And it feels like the thing stops squirming and like everybody
Mhm.
just clicks into place with each other. And I've
Mhm.
seen it in like the classroom in like Sakhi 101. I've seen it on a larger scale in like the divans of like
Mhm.
people learning each other
Yeah.
and respecting each other and being compassionate with each other, even when they're disagreeing, even when there's like things are tense. Um,
Mhm.
and it reminds me of like a conversation I think that I've been having a lot more recently, which is like how, um, especially like in like suburbia, we've like lost a sense of like what it means to be in community with each other. And
Mhm.
it can make us impatient. It can make us um, harsh in how we interact with one another. It can make us like unable to see that like divinity in other people, even when they're like saying things that we like deeply disagree with. And um, I think that like civic is also a glimpse of like what we could be as a larger
Mhm.
month if we gave each other that kind of grace and like shape shifted in that way around each other of
Mhm.
like, well, I've actually bought into this 2 week experience as like something that I am dedicated to that's going to change things for me. And so have you. And so like how do we come here knowing that like even if we don't have the same viewpoints or the same like backgrounds or the same like even questions necessarily that we're all coming here like looking for connection like that's our main
Mhm.
goal. And I think that when we can
Yeah.
kind of reorient ourselves to that instead of like picking apart like you do ardas this way and I do ardas this way or
Mhm.
like you run divan this way and I don't do that or like you have this belief about this thing and I don't, I think when we
Mhm.
are put in that sort of like you said container for 2 weeks
Mhm.
something changes. Like I see something change in
Yeah.
every single person who's there.
Yeah.
Um, and it's always like incredible to me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
No,
That was very beautiful.
yeah. No, thank you. Thank you too. Thank you for, yeah, no, thank you for also like expanding on that in such a beautiful way. And actually, can I add like
Sure.
a thought that I was just having while you were
Yeah.
sharing? Because that made me think about, and this, sorry, this is like the academic
No,
out
good.
for a
Go.
second. But there's a really, really beautiful article by Rajveer Singh Judge. It's called The Construction of Dangerous Boundaries, in which like he's reflecting on the work of Rahul Deep Singh Gill, who passed away like a few years ago, and they're thinking about the work, this focus on safe spaces, kind of like across our culture, or I mean, kind of across not our one, but just kind of overall, right? Like in this world right now, like, but something that they're think that they kind of point out is this um, how this focus on like building safe spaces ends up still preserving danger, and still maintains that duality between safety and danger, because uh, uh, that work of building safety is just work of like kind of cordoning away from the danger, but that still then ends up preserving that danger. And instead, like in kind of thinking about kind of Sikh ideas of like, well, what is danger, and kind of these teachings that we're not really supposed to be kind of mapping danger out there, but actually the dangers within our own selves, the dangers like in our home. They kind of think with that Saki of Guru Nanak Sahib, of the Ujjar Jal Saki, to kind of think about actually this work of what does it look like for us, instead of what is this work of actually absorbing the danger, this orientation to absorb the danger, to scatter it within oneself, and how that such that that duality is transcended between safety and danger. Because at the end of the day, like the goal is not to just build safe spaces and maintain danger, but it's actually for a world where danger does not even, it ceases to exist, right? So, and how there's this kind of orientation that they offer in thinking through Sikhi, of this work of absorbing danger, scattering it within oneself, and that process transforms both oneself and the other. Anyways, I just kind of sit with that a lot, because I think that is something that I hold on to, and something that I kind of what it's I share, I think a lot with kind of some of my other queer trans Sikh sangats as well, and something that we kind of like have talked quite a bit about this that idea of absorbing danger and scattering it within oneself, and the transformations that does to oneself and others as well. And I think that kind of that orientation have been guiding me, is something that I've been kind of trying to learn, both in kind of going into Sikh spaces. So even when I went to Sidak for the first time, I think, although I had not come across that article, that was something that I was kind of, for the past couple of years since I'm kind of going back into Sangat spaces, that has been something that I've been kind of sitting with a lot, right? Of like these limitations of like self-segregating, limitations of kind of, and of course there are times when we need just safe spaces, and we can't, keep up, there's a can't we it is poison at the end of the day to keep absorbing the danger after, but there's also limitations which is cordoning away from the danger. So anyways, long story short, I think like that, that kind of idea of like what kind of transformations and what kind of bond can we build when we kind of are oriented towards each other, like in our orientation towards the guru, because at the end of the day, guru is within each and every one of us, right? So what kind of learnings can come out of facing the danger, absorbing the danger, scattering it within oneself? And I think I really appreciate. I think Sidak was one of those spaces as well, that like I've been going into spaces, that was kind of one of my like motivations, for example. And I know that has been kind of, and I appreciated, I think, the different set of ways that Sidak helps in metabolizing that danger as well, like in absorbing that danger, like being able to then metabolize it such that the danger doesn't overtake you and poison you, and like, but like how to then metabolize it and like uh, go through that process of transformation, which is both within oneself and within the sangat as well. And I think like, yeah, so as you were kind of, I was just thinking about all these different set of ideas as you were talking about kind of that adjusting that like that happens like over the course of those 2 weeks. And we kind of see that sangat that comes at the end of it, like being that which happens through these exposure to the danger that like each of us are. Okay, I'll stop talking now.
No, that's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. I think that's beautifully said. What can I ask you next? Are well, I think kind of talking about, you talked about a memorable moment, which was like touching Guru for the first time, sitting behind the balki, interacting with Bonnie in that like sort of material way. Was there a moment that you can remember, either from your first time at Sidak or your second time, where you were like pushed a little bit out of your comfort zone and in like a healthy way? And like how that sort of stuck with you or shaped you?
Let's see. I think there's like so many and they're all just kind of like
Oh, that's fair.
amalgamated. But I think maybe I think like even going to kind of going to Sidak, and I think always I think like exposure to like cis het men is always like uh isn't always like a stretching myself and kind of become like, or at least exposing myself in certain ways and
Oh.
that are going outside of my comfort zone. And I think there were a lot of learnings that kind of came out of that for my own self. Like, and of course, I think the triggers were generative as well. So I'm like really, really thankful for like kind of all the ways that I was also triggered. But I think like, cause it was actually helpful. And I think it was, it allowed for kind of different, ways to come back to kind of, um, practicing love, like even when it's hard, and like practicing kind of like how to hold on to one's own pathshahi, like how to there's a kikaida like a talk that I hold on to is Jeko nind kare har jan ki apna gun na gawave, like even if like someone does like nindya, like do not lose your own gun. Do not use, so I kind of like, I mean, not to say that there was nindya that was happening, and that's not what I'm saying, but like, or at least like kind of even in the kind of the midst of being triggered, even when like I think in the midst of kind of going through a moment that maybe is like a bit hard because like someone maybe said something that like, it's just like, oh my god, no, like what? But I think like it was still like, so it was still a very generative process to like keep insisting on walking together, despite kind of these divergences, and also to see that insistence happening on the other side as well, in different ways. So I think that was also new and like where that insistence is kind of, even if it looks different, but it's somewhat kind of reciprocal. Another, I think, sorry, this is not directly, but I just like another moment that kind of popped up, which is in my memory, was just like seeing kind of both in the first year, but of course, definitely the second year, even more like more queer and trans Sikhs, like kind of there and like taking up space, and like, like whether it was like doing kirtan for the first time, or whether it was like taking hukamnama, or whether it was even like during like the divan, like doing jar seva as well. So I feel like all these different ways that like it was just like, I like, there were so many moments that I just started crying, just witnessing and seeing other queer and trans Sikhs like be there and take up space and like access the guru in that way, and like be at the center of the sangat in a certain way, as opposed to kind of being absent from or being kind of at the margins of the sangat. So that was also just like really, that was really, really special as well. And I don't think I answered your question.
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
It counts as both. I think you answered both like challenging things, like an overarching thing, which I think is really important, what you said. Um, because something I've said many times in like other podcasts for this Civic Impact podcast series is like, I think that for the first like 3 days of Civic, there's a lot of discomfort for everybody who's there because we're being asked to kind of stretch ourselves in a way. Um, like intellectually, but also like emotionally, in the conversations we're having, in the disagreements we're having, in the just like different personalities that we're encountering, because it does go back to that thing of like, well, I don't like voluntarily necessarily put myself in a room with people who have this particular opinion, or like I don't know if we would ever like speak in the real world. And I think that that's, if there is that like intention to get connection out of those 2 weeks, if there's that intention to like build sangat out of those 2 weeks, um, I think the thing that happens after that discomfort is that kind of thing I talked about of like slotting in, or like, the
Yeah.
shape of the sangat sort of starts to become discernible. But I do think that like a very common experience at Civic is an initial an initial discomfort. I think a story I've told
Yeah.
like once, because it was back in like 2018, is that there was a Sidaker from the UK who was like part of uh, a very particular like group. I'm trying to like not reveal anything that
Yeah.
could trace anybody back, but yes, had a very particular way of doing things, as all of us do.
Yeah.
And the first week of Sidak struggled a lot with seeing the way that we did the bond because it was different from the way that he was used to seeing the bond done. Um,
Mhm.
and by the second week, he came up to me like when I was walking outside. And he's like, I just want to say, the first week that I was here, I had to like take myself on a walk like during almost every the bond because I would get full of so much rage about like thinking that you all are not doing things the right way. And by the end of the second week, it's like you not only have like had a lot of conversations, been like stretched to become more compassionate, hopefully, or stretched to become more understanding, hopefully. It's also that like a lot of the conversations in 201, the second week, are centered around like sort of existential threats to our community and the understanding that like actually the biggest threats are not, it's not about like policing somebody's devotion or policing somebody's reverence who's within the community or like quote unquote like protecting the guru from other Sikhs in a way that maybe feels right in the moment because we each have such powerful and deep relationships with the guru. But it's about like saffronization of our institutions and like what the nation of India, sort of how the nation of India sort of narrativizes Sikh history and Sikh tradition and also like principles. It's
Mhm.
about, we talk about 84, we talk about the 90s, we talk about kind of these huge periods of our history where the threat is very much coming from the outside. And if
Mhm.
we don't start to understand who we are and sort of like understand that our strength lies in our diversity and in our insistence on being in Sangat with each other,
Mhm.
um, that like those things will become a lot more sort of powerful if we don't do that work. And I think
Yeah.
part of what he was saying was like seeing all of those things I like now understand that like, yeah, when I am with my Sangat back home or with my like community and the way that we do things, we're going to do things the way that we do them. But
Mhm.
it's not like some kind of existential threat to see that you guys don't do one of the pots that we do at the end of the bond.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that experience in like many different manifestations is common at Civic.
Yeah.
Um, And I think that that's a really good thing. And maybe it goes back to the thing you were saying of like not cordoning ourselves off from like danger or perceived danger that we like find indifference. Um,
Mhm.
so can we leave the space of Sidak where we've cultivated Sangat and an environment of like compassion and understanding and also difference? Um, and then like have enough rootedness in that and rootedness in Shabad and rootedness in a relationship with the Guru to then like go out into the world with all of its difference and all of its danger
Yeah.
and start
Yeah.
to interact differently. Um, and I think that that's also part of it is that like there is a time when we are called back together with those people that we find similarity or alignment with, and there is a time that we are called to leave that space so that we may interact with people who are different than us in a softer way. I like really
Mhm.
believe that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, which I don't even really know what we're talking about anymore, but yes,
Abs-
challenges, growth, cultivating Sangat.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah. No,
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, no, I 100% agree. No, yeah, no, thank you for like summing that up really beautifully as well. And it just made me kind of think about like, this is kind of an idea that like we also discussed at Sidak, and like in terms of how this, we've just been taught that when we think about what the guru looks like, there's like a very particular image that we have, right? Of like what, like where we can see the guru and in whom we can see the guru. And that is like, and I feel like so much of this work of like sitting with different people that look different, that like are practicing differently, that like are have their relationship to the guru looks different, is expanding our own capacity and our like to be able to see the guru in each and everybody, like outside of just the ways that we've been taught that the guru looks like. But in reality, like if the guru is everywhere in each and every one of us, and like if when we cultivate that love, where if we see that guru in each and everybody, like some of this work that like that Sidak does that like happens in these 2 weeks is like that work of learning to love the guru, recognizing that the guru is in each and every one of us, so that like can we love the guru in such a way that like we see the guru in the various like manifestations, and in the various ways that the guru like uh so yeah is embodied like
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. Um, yeah, I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit about like, um, I think like we'll start to sort of transition into like questions that people who haven't yet gone to Sidak or come to Sidak might be having as they're like looking at the application. Um, did you feel like you needed to like have prior knowledge of like Sikh in general in order to participate in the track topics, or did you feel like um yeah, what did you feel about that? Because I think that's a
Yeah.
big question that we get of like, do I need to know how to read Gurmukhi? Do I need to know like a lot about Sikh history? I've said this like every episode, but like the 3 months before I went to Sidak in 2017, so my second time going to Sidak, I like made a long list of books that I thought I had to read beforehand.
Mhm.
Nobody told
Oh
me that I
wow.
had to, but I was like, I
Yeah.
have to do this. And then I
Yeah.
never read a single one. I just panicked for like 3 months. So,
uh,
for
uh,
those who are curious, could you answer that question?
yeah. Yeah, no, I no, I think that's what's like also really beautiful, and also I think part of like what I like in line with like what I was saying about this work of seeing the guru in each and every one of us and like expanding that capacity, because I think like it goes back to I think like we've been taught that the guru looks like those like cis men at the gurdwaras
Mm,
who like are embodied that particular way, they speak in that particular way, they like they recite the Barney that particular way and they recite those particular Barneys, but it's
mm,
just like they have a particular that. So it's just like we've just been our understanding and our vision and our love for the guru has just been so particularized
mm,
that like I think this work is of like the beauty of Sidak is that like people are coming from all sorts of places and are the path literally translating into the path are like at different parts of the path, right? And like but we're all the path, and I feel like at towards the end by the end of it, people kind of understand that like the idea of like wow, the path really means path, and like we are on the same path, even if we're at different places. Where yes, there's people who are like Amritaris who have been like they like have been keeping like a particular type of way, like are like so like for like, since the beginning of their like since they've been like like since their like childhood. And there's other folks who like this is their first kind of formal exposure to Sikhi. There's folks like who don't like speak Punjabi, like there's folks who don't know Gurmukhi at all, who've never engaged with Barney. And the fact that like in this process everybody's kind of has something to learn from each other. Everybody, like there's even the people who are coming in thinking that they know everything, but like in that process, like that invitation, like for humility is like kind of happens of like, wait, actually, like I have something to learn.
mm.
Like even if I may think like I have it all down and like I'm the kind of authority figure here, but like there's kind of um and kind of anyways, long story short, like no, I think that we that Sidak I think like is kind of one of those like rare spaces that like um allows different folks to kind of come in and access a space like regardless of where you're at, like kind of on the path, and um serves as that container for folks to be able to realize that relationship to each other, and of being on that shared path despite kind of uh being like at different places in that path. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, beautifully said. Yeah, so short answer is no, and also thank you so much for elaborating on that in such a beautiful way. Yeah, I think then maybe we can like start to close of like, you know, I always like set this up as like somebody's got like 5,000 tabs open. One of the tabs is the application.
Yeah.
And what would you say to them if they're like still feeling unsure? Um, and also sort of follow-up question to that is like, what would you say to them about like how to make the most of that experience should they like apply and get in?
Yeah. Like, yeah, I guess like, what I say to like an applicant, I would say, and maybe I think I like maybe specifically speaking to like here in this comment, like other queer and trans Sikhs, but like I think this kind of applies beyond queer and trans Sikhs as well. Like it applies to like everybody as well. But because I like of course like I love Sidak, you love Sidak. So I feel like, I like it's we and that's very clear. I think like how much we love Sidak is very, very clear. And I guess like I would just say like, and this is something that I kind of like, as I'm talking and selling Sidak to different folks, I always kind of make clear like, it's a really beautiful experience, and that is not to say like you won't be challenged, like it's not to say like it is perfect in terms of like that, like you won't be triggered and like there would be no kind of uncomfort. Like it is like there maybe will be points that you would be triggered, like there will be points that like it will be hard and like, but that is like part of like the beauty of Sidak, that like it becomes a space where we're able to still insist on that sangat. And I think that insistence is like a new thing that we haven't really experienced, because I think it is, we do live in a world where it's easy, and I do that all the time, like in terms of like walking away from like walking out on people, walking out on communities, walking out as especially when you've been walked out on as well, right? Like continuously. So I feel like but you're stuck for those 2 weeks, and I think that it's like a very good kind of analogy of also where we're standing in the world as well, where we're like, we're on this, like we're here and we're stuck here, and we got to figure out how to be in conflict with each other. We got to figure out how to like find a way to love each other. We got to figure out how to be in sangat with each other. We got to figure out how to be like in generative conflict with, or in generative community, in loving community, and like with each other, like just despite and alongside all the messiness that is sangat, all the messiness that is community, right? So anyways, long story, and I think that I guess like I foreground that kind of tension, and foreground that messiness, because I think sometimes that is what kind of holds a lot of folks back from accessing the space. So I guess in making that comment, I just want to validate that like the messiness will be there, but that like this is that space where like we can do this work of like tending to and like creating space for it and learning to work through and with and alongside that messiness, like in ways that like serve us not only the Sikh context, but kind of like beyond as well, like in how to kind of exist in this world with where we're at. So I think all to say, like, if you are wanting to build that really, if you are wanting to like cultivate that insistence, right? Like, and practice that insistence, apply apply and like come through and know that like you will not be alone, right? Like from the first, yeah, like in the way that like going to Sidak my first year, I also had kind of various like hesitations and nervousness and anxieties, and that I was not alone with those being there, like that like other folks were coming in for different reasons with their own different kind of manifestations of those as well. And thirdly, that like there were folks like you find your sangat there, right? Like you find a sangat there. And I think that all to say that like, yeah, I would still like apply if like that. Yeah, I would say apply, yo, apply and come through, and it will be we'll be there. So you get to hang out with us as well. So yeah.
It's true. No, I think that's well said. Um, okay, I guess like my final question for you then is is there like anything else you want, like any last words about Sidak, anything else you want to share about Sidak? One of the sort of subsets to this question is if you so choose, not everybody does, is like if you could describe Sidak in a word or a line, what would it be? But I understand that that's like maybe panic inducing. So
Mm. I feel like we have been using the word insistence quite a bit, so I don't know if that so I wonder if like the word insistence would come in. Um and maybe like insistence on like love. And when I say that, like I don't mean love and this like kind of romanticized, like love is like messy and like painful and um like there's like sacrifices that happen, there's like transformations that happen to the self, um and to the other, like there's and the very kind of categories and the coherence of the self and the other that are challenged in that process as well. So anyways, long story short, I feel like the maybe like Sidak is kind of that insistence on like learning to love the guru, um that I think is kind of alongside all that messiness, pain, tensions, and ananda and beauty and all of that that comes alongside kind of uh, that work of insistence, that work of love, and learning how to love like in this world. Um, yeah, which I think was, yeah, I will stop talking now.
No, I think that's so beautiful, and it reminds me of, like, I don't know, people talk about, like, the stubborn love that, like, a parent has for a child or a sibling has for a sibling, where it's like, um, "I'm not just going to love you because you did something that I wanted you to do or because you believe things that I want you to believe." I mean, in an ideal scenario,
Yeah,
or plenty transactional
yeah,
relationships, um, in certain circumstances, but in that ideal sense of, like, this is not a transaction. This is not conditional. Um, if I am walking this path, I believe that um, the divine is in you and the guru is in you, and that if I want to have a relationship with the guru, it doesn't just happen through Shabad, it also happens through Sangat. Uh, and I really think that, yeah, you've just summed it up beautifully. I think that's exactly what it is. It's that like insistence on loving, not just like despite, but also because of.
mhm,
I think that that's in its best sort of circumstance, like love
yeah,
expands. And I think that's
mhm,
something, it expands a person. It like sort of makes us more vast. Um, and a thing that I see every single year at Sidak is a kind of like collective expansion of everyone there. So beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um,
mhm.
okay, thank you so much for joining us and for taking time um, to just like talk to me about Sadek and your experience so eloquently, as always. For those of you who are listening and still wondering about Sidak or still wondering what track you ought to take, please visit sikri.org/Sidak to read about the different tracks. Take your time looking through that stuff. You can also look at the application without, feeling any pressure to send it in right away. And if you still have questions, you can email sidak@sikri.org and hopefully get those questions answered. Thank you again, Saiba, for coming and for speaking to me.
Oh no,
Why
thank you so much as well.
Oh yeah, no problem. No,
Thank
it's
you.
okay. I always do this.
No, thank
Okay,
you for allowing me to be here, for thinking about me as well.
of course. And excited to see you this summer. And for those of you listening, also excited to potentially see you.
Yes,
All right.
definitely.
Waheguru ji ka khalsa, Waheguru ji ki fateh.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
Sidak is a transformative leadership development program for young Sikh adults aged 18 to 39. Engage in an immersive 2-week experience that fosters connection, growth, and a deeper understanding of Sikhi.
You were listening to Sickcast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.